Sound test, 1, 2, 3. Sound check.
We're just waiting for the sound check, folks. I apologize for a few minutes late. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today at the Ottawa Police Service Board meeting, public meeting, June 27, 2022. I'd like to call our meeting to order for June 27, 2022, in recognition of National Indigenous History Month, as well as the National Indigenous Peoples Day, which was celebrated last week on June 21st. We have invited Grandmother Irene to assist us in the opening of our meeting. At this time, I would like to invite Grandmother Irene to the podium.
Thank you very much. So it's my honor to be here to open up your gathering. And oh yes, we would like to make the offering.
Yes, I would like to offer you some tobacco. I believe it pass on to you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Grandma.
Thank you very much. It's really important that, you make the tobacco offering, because that's how we ask for things. And so I've been asked to come here today to open your gathering and bring the spirit of the drum. So I'm going to open up with a song, because our songs are our prayers. And before I do that, though, we always cleanse ourselves before we do ceremony. And so I've got my little smudge kit here. I carry this in my purse because you never know when you're going to have to smudge, especially if you're feeling not grounded. This is a beautiful sage medicine that we use to ground ourselves whenever we're feeling not safe, or if we've got a scattered mind or whatever. And so that's what we do. We take this beautiful medicine, and I'm going to put it in my smudge bowl here. Don't worry, the alarms won't go off. It never does. I've done this many, many times. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask a male to light my fire. And the first one I see is Dave, police officer, Dave Zacharias. Do you want to come up and be my fire keeper? So basically, you're going to just strike that beautiful match, and we're going to light this beautiful sage. Wonderful. So thank you for being the spark of life. That's what men's roles are. Thank you. That's what men's roles are. They are the spark of life, and women are the water keepers. They are the givers of life. So we're going to cleanse our minds so that we'll have clarity and understanding. We're going to cleanse our ears so that we will listen with intent. And we're going to cleanse our eyes so that we can see a good future, especially for this police service and all the responsibilities that they have. And we're going to cleanse our mouth so that we will be respectful to say good things to one another. And we're going to make that connection from our heart to our Creator. And I like to cleanse my tummy, because that's where all my feelings sit. That's where all our feelings sit. So I'm going to take any kind of scattered energy, and I'm just going to ground it to Mother Earth so that we can be all present for one another. And the song that I've picked to sing is called Bindigan, and it's a welcome song. So we're going to, now that we've cleansed ourselves, we're going to invite those ancestors in. And we all have ancestors, so I want you to think about your own ancestors, because they're the ones that are your helpers on your earth walk, and they love to come and visit. So we're going to invite them in with this beautiful Bindigan song, which means welcome. So in Ojibwe, to say welcome, we say Bindigan. We're going to invite those grandfathers in, Mishomis. We're going to invite those grandmothers in, Nokomis. And then everybody else is Nagi Wagama. So it's a real simple song. If you feel like singing, please do. But most importantly, think about your ancestors and your helpers, because you're going to need them. You're going to need them every day for this whole year. I'm going to do 4 honor beats, and then I'll take you into this song. So this is the heartbeat. And I often think about my ancestors dancing into the gathering and visiting. So we're going to ask them to come in through that eastern doorway. And that eastern doorway, we ask for new beginnings. Bindagan, Misho, Misak. Bindagan, no, Misak. Bindagan, Nagi, Wagama. Wahey, hey, hey, ho. So let's invite them in. Wahey, hey, hey, ho. Wahey, hey, hey, ho. Wahey, hey, hey, ho. Wahey, hey, hey, ho. And in that southern direction, we pray for our youth. We pray for their confidence, their well-being, and their leadership, because they are the leaders of the next 7 generations. Bindagan, Misho, Misak. Bindagan, no, Misak. Bindagan, Nagi, Wagama. Wahey, hey, hey, ho. Let me hear ya. Wahey, hey, hey, ho. Wahey, hey, hey, ho. Wahey, hey, hey, ho. Wahey, hey, hey, ho. And in that western direction, that's where our bear sits. And the bear is very powerful. And the bear is the protector of the people, especially the vulnerable. So we pray for those police services to be the protectors. Bindagan, Misho, Misak. Bindagan, no, Misak. Bindagan, Nagi, Wagama. Wahey, hey, hey, ho. 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 All right. This is our last round. So please invite your ancestors in. Bindagan, Misho, Misak. Bindagan, no, Misak. Bindagan, Nagi, Wagama. Wahey, hey, hey, ho. 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 Jimmy Wetch. Thank you very much. You're so welcome. Good stuff.
Thank you so much, Grandmother Irene. Megwitch, thank you. Thank you very much, Grandmother Irene, and thank you, Constable Bugash, for helping us bringing Grandmother Irene to the City Hall. We really appreciate you being with us today and opening our meeting. It was so beautiful. I hope you accept those tobacco pouches as a small token of our appreciation. I wish we could have Grandmother Irene here with us for every meeting. That was really beautiful. Before proceeding to the agenda, I want to recognize that the Ottawa is located on unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe host nation. The people of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe nation have lived on this territory for a millennium. Their culture and present have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. The Ottawa Police Service Board honor the peoples and the land of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe Nation. Today, Ottawa is home to approximately 40,000 First Nation, Inuit, and Métis people. Ottawa's Indigenous community is diverse, representing many nations, languages, and customs. The Ottawa Police Service Board honor all the First Nation, Inuit, and Métis people and their valuable past and present contribution to this land. In-camera meeting. Prior to this public meeting, we held our in-camera meeting. The board received a briefing on Canada Day operations, a personal matter, an operational matter, and a legal matter. We also consider a delay application. There will be further update on Canada Day as part of the public meeting as well. Just a quick reminder, we will be proceeding with in-camera meeting after the public meeting as we did not finish our agenda. I will now proceed with the confirmation of the agenda. Confirmation of the agenda that the Ottawa Police Service Board confirmed the agenda of the 27th June 2022 meeting. Is the agenda confirmed? Thank you. Confirmation of minutes. Minutes 60 of May 30, 2022, that the Ottawa Police Service Board confirmed minutes 60 of the 30th May 2022 meeting. Are the meeting confirmed? Thank you. Declaration of interest. I see none. Item number 5 is a public delegation. We have a few public delegations registered to speak today. I would like to remind all participants of the requirement to abide by our procedural guidelines. This includes refraining from using unparliamentary and offensive language, as well as making allegation against member of the Ottawa Police or even member of this board. It is also mean focusing your comment on the topic you sign up to speak on. Failure to follow these guidelines may result in your delegation being curtailed. The board has included regular public delegation as a part of its business meeting, and these are meant to be respectful and collaborative exchange. I will now call on the first registered delegate to speak, Robin Brown, 613-819 Black Hawk, he/him. You have 5 minutes, Mr. Brown. Go ahead.
Can you hear me? Very good. Before I make my remarks, I'd like to again call on the board to stop limiting public participation and instead hold hybrid or virtual meetings. I'd also like to strongly condemn the actions of Chair El-Jantari for labeling critique of the board and the board members' actions as impermissible, quote, allegations. These are both gross violations of democracy that go against the spirit of the board's legal right to meaningfully consult with the public. In January 2021, the OPS presented the board with its initiative to create an alternative mental health crisis response system. The OPS said they had brought together a group of partner organizations to lead the initiative called the Guiding Council. The only problem was they hadn't told some of the partner organizations, including the Ottawa Black Mental Health Coalition, of which the 613-819 Black Hub was a member. After a public outcry at the OPS leading such an initiative, the OPS agreed to have it moved under the management of the city. However, instead of removing themselves from any leadership role in the initiative, as the public demanded, they did exactly the opposite and joined the guiding council, which they weren't on when they first created it. And we have since learned that the guiding council will, in consultation with the city, decide which community groups get $2 million of the $3 million cut from this year's OPS budget increase. When I spoke at the board's December meeting, I said the role of the OPS should be playing in developing an alternative mental health crisis response system should be similar to the role an abusive husband plays when his wife finally decides to leave him. Sure, he needs to be around to give her the keys to the house and the car and the Wi-Fi password, but he should absolutely not be at the table with her team that will help her design her new life without him. The OPS should absolutely not be at the table that's leading this initiative. The Guiding Council is yet another place where the OPS appears to be pushing for a mental health crisis response system that still has lots of police involvement and zero impact on their annual multi-million-dollar budget increases. The OPS's influence is already clear in the Guiding Council's terms of reference, which aims for a system that still sends cops, quote, when the crisis is linked to criminal activity, unquote. Now, wouldn't that include a situation like Abdirahman Abdi, who people called the cops on because he was allegedly touching women in a coffee shop? And wouldn't that still include a situation like Greg Ritchie, who people called the cops on because they said they saw a man with a knife that turned out to be a ceremonial tomahawk? Yes, it would. Abdi and Greg would likely end up just as dead under the system currently being proposed by the Guiding Council. The OPS influence is also clear by the lack of any mention in the Guiding Council's terms of reference of either the 613-819 Black Hub's alternative non-police mental health crisis response report or Toronto's non-police mental health crisis response teams that launched in March. Why do the terms of reference have no mention of Toronto committing $8.5 million to its initiative this year? Could it be because the OPS has great influence on the Guiding Council and doesn't want anyone asking uncomfortable questions like, hey, why couldn't we take $8.5 million from the OPS and start a program like that in Ottawa? Do we really want the same people who let thousands of truckers besiege the city and jeopardize the physical and mental health of Ottawa residents deciding who gets mental health funding? The recently released report, Troubling Encounters Ottawa Residents' Experience of Policing, confirmed that racialized and low-income Ottawa residents have extremely low levels of trust in the Ottawa police. In fact, the report states, quote, in short, for many people in this city, police do not contribute to individual or community safety. In fact, they appear to do the very opposite, unquote. Allowing the police to remain on the Guiding Council will further erode what little trust there is. The OPS will further erode that trust by pushing to maintain the outrageously unbalanced budget status quo, where the entire budget for the city's anti-racism strategy is $100,000, while the OPS's 2022 dry cleaning budget is $495,000. Removing the OPS from the Guiding Council is particularly urgent as the city staffers in charge of the city's community safety and well-being plan said April 21st that the Guiding Council will be the model for the plan's community leadership action teams that will lead implementation of the plan. If this board is to fulfill its legal mandate to support a truly comprehensive community safety and well-being plan, you must use your power to make two things happen. One, immediately cancel the OPS's self-facility project, which is based on the old idea that the OPS must keep expanding when the reverse is true. And we have more evidence of that, why that is every day, from the Ottawa occupation to the OPS's use of force race data they're about to show. And two, immediately remove the OPS from the Guiding Council and get grassroots organizations and people with lived experience on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. See no question. The next speaker is Will Cooper, Rideau Students Union, he, him.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Will Cooper. My pronouns are he, him, il, and I sit on the board of directors of the Rideau Students Union, a student advocacy organization operating in 16 high schools here in Ottawa across multiple boards. On Thursday, the 12th of May, students, mainly girls, at Béatrice Desloges École Catholique Secondaire were subjected to a sexist and demeaning dress code blitz. Students were instructed to bend over and had skirts and shorts measured by staff. These students came to school to pursue their education, but were sent home or to the principal's office simply for the clothes they wore. The following day at 11:30 a.m., Students peacefully demonstrated outside their school in response to the actions taken by staff. However, rather than having their concerns heard, even acknowledged by the school, they were met with sirens and police, were pressed up against police cruisers as though they had committed a serious offense. By 1 p.m, OPS officers had dispersed the protest. When these students went to school that day, they went there to learn, not to be in fear, either in fear of the teachers who are meant to be aiding in that learning, or in fear of arrest or detention by police. When this place of learning, of nurture, becomes one of foreboding, it is every student's right under Section 2 of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms to make known their injustices. The actions taken by that day, both by the school and OPS, was shown that we live in a system where the charter applies but to a select few. When in February, we endured a radical and violent occupation of our downtown core, it took the invocation of national emergency measures legislation for the police to do their jobs. Contrast this, then, with the events of May the 13th, when in but 90 minutes, officers arrived and quashed the rights of dozens of students to peaceful assembly. Then, on the 11th of this month, police falsely detained 2 sick men on a bogus tip outside Parliament. And 6 days later, a Black student at Hillcrest High School was targeted by police and given an $800 fine. You simply don't have to look too far in Ottawa to see law enforcement playing demographic dodgeball with selective enforcement of the rules. 1 year ago this month, the School Resource Officer Program was ended by the Ottawa Carleton District School Board, and subsequently by the police service itself at all boards in Ottawa. This program was scrapped because it simply did not work. It targeted racialized and other marginalized groups and made them feel not welcome in their own schools. There is now talk of reinstating this failed initiative in the OCDSB, once again subjecting Indigenous, queer, Black, and disabled students to an environment in which they do not feel comfortable to pursue their studies. This must not be permitted to happen. When youth are struggling, when they may even be suicidal, the last thing they need is to be sent to a person with a uniform and a gun. SROs serve only to intimidate students into line, with no thought spared for the consequences of this intimidation. On the 10th of June last year, the OCDSB issued a formal apology to all individuals and communities impacted by the SRO program. The OPS, despite being the ones who were actually responsible for the trauma inflicted, despite withdrawing officers from all of Ottawa's 4 school boards, has remained silent. Every time students from at-risk communities interact with police officers, lives are at play. Studies have shown that youth aged 15 to 24 are more likely than any other age group to report suffering from a mental illness. And in 2016, nearly 1/3 of deaths among adolescents were a result of suicide. What students need is not more police presence in schools or in their lives. It isn't to have their democratic rights to freedom of expression and peaceful assembly infringed when they need most to be heard. And it certainly isn't a police officer when they're in crisis. What students need is proper community supports, proper access to social workers, and to mental health care. We demand to be heard. We demand an end to the systematic discrimination. We demand better from our police service and from our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Cooper. And a question from Mr. Cooper. Thank you, Mr. Cooper. The next presenter is Bailey Gauthier, they, them.
Can you guys hear me on that? Oh, sorry. Sorry, before you start my time, can I just ask a question? I have like little diagrams to show the scale of the weapon I'm going to be talking about. I'm going to be talking about the Arwen. But is it okay if I like walk up to you and like show you the thing, or is it better to like stay here, or?
I think you can give it to the security. She'll pass it on to the board member if you
Can
have
someone
some.
hold it for me? Because it's kind of like a. I asked if you guys could bring it in and you said no, so I had to make like a scale replica of a drawing. So. So it's just like a visual. So like if someone can like stand and like if Mr. Gritter wants to help me, that'd be awesome. But I just wanted to ask before that, just because like if I can show you, it's a bit more effective. Could you pose with it? Just to, like show them? Thank you so much. Can you flip it the other way? Perfect. Yep. So just for clarification, that's like, I had to find because you wouldn't bring the Arwen in, so I had to like find the dimensions and kind of draw it. That's how big the weapon is.
Can you go ahead, Bailey, with your presentation?
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so this is the Arwen. What that stands for is Anti-Riot Weapon Enfield. It was designed by the British military in the 1970s for crowd control. It has a firing range of 100 meters or 328 feet. So it's a long range weapon. The munitions are about 5 inches long and they hit with about 180 pounds of force. So just for context of what that speed is, the fastest baseball ever thrown in history is about 105 miles per hour. So this firearm shoots you with a baseball at nearly double the speed of the world's fastest pitch. Because it is a firearm, the SIU gets invoked every time it's used. I went through a bunch of the SIU reports and about 90% of the reports were mental health calls. And basically what happens is like in the SIU reports, if someone gets hurt during an interaction with police, they investigate it, right? But it was like all the damage that was coming from these reports were fractures, internal bleeding, and there was a shit ton of deaths. People have died from getting hit by this weapon. R1 is categorized, R1 is categorized as a less lethal grenade launcher. And I found an article from the McGill Daily from 2012 that actually went into great detail about this weapon. Because like in 2008, Calgary started using them. But then in 2012, they did a report on it. So basically, the thing that's interesting about the Arwen is that if it's used at close range, so like 20 to, like it can shoot 328 feet, right? It's a long range weapon. If you use it within 20 to 10 feet, it loses its less lethal status and becomes a lethal weapon. So like, that's kind of like an interesting factoid about this weapon. So it's like, if you're bringing that to people's homes or apartments during mental health crisis, you're using it in close range. So it's like, you're basically using lethal force on purpose. Because like when you go to someone's house, like there's not going to be 320 feet between you. You're going to be like right up close to them, right? So I have to say that's like kind of negligent. Like you can't just bring this like weapon in, because like I spent 2 years talking to all of you guys about the tasers. So this weapon is worse. So don't use the tasers, but also don't use this, like please. But anyway, so like if I can show you, like, you want to see the distance of 10 feet? I measured it out with string. You can say no, I'm sure you can figure out what 10 feet is. It's not great. But anyway, so I had a solution for you guys. Just like, you guys seem to like want to keep responding to mental health calls, despite the fact you make things 1,000 billion times % worse. So it's like, A, stop going to them. Or B, if you must attend, you should bring no weapons and probably just hand people money. Like if you go to a mental health call, just go and just give them a lot of cash. That will solve 99% of mental health calls. Because like mental health isn't people being violent. It's people at the end of their rope. It's people who are stressed out. They can't afford food. They can't afford shelter. They have no access to medical care. Maybe they're in pain and they can't get access to proper medical care. You don't know what they're going through. So it's like with the tasers, when you're electrocuting people, if you know if they have like a medical condition, if they have a pacemaker, they die. Like this kills you. So it's like when you're shooting like this gigantic weapon at people at close range, you're gonna kill someone. So and these are monstrously expensive. I couldn't find any cost of it, but in 2008 they were worth $4,500. So it's like with inflation, that's about $6 grand. So it's like simply take the money from this and give it to people. Like this is all there is to mental health calls. Like, well, stop, please stop. Like, I guess that's pretty much it. But it's like, I wanted to show you like the distance of it, but you guys can figure out what 10 feet is. But it's just like, you brought this to a mental health call on 5th Street in May. And then also in February, you shot one of the convoy people in the face with it. I couldn't find any updates or any information about whether or not he died or had to go to the hospital. Because it's like with this weapon, it is recommended through the manufacturing. If you get shot with it, you must be taken to the hospital. Like it recommends that. So it's like, please, like not, no. Like seriously, just like, that's a 2.5 foot weapon. Why did you bring it to a mental health call? Why would you ever use this in a city? This is a battlefield weapon. So anyway, that's what I want to talk to you about. I have 20 seconds. Thank you very much. Please stop going to mental health calls.
Thank you, Bailey. Our final speaker for this item is Sarb Kazir.
Okay, the agenda for today states accessible formats and communication supports are available upon request. I'd like to submit a request to bring back the ability for public delegates to use Zoom to attend these meetings. I'd like to know exactly why it's technically impossible for the capital city of a G7 country to facilitate virtual public delegations. Councilors are allowed to use it. Why can't the public? My next thing that I want to talk about are a couple of articles that were released. One on the weekend. It was really published by the CTV on Saturday. And it mentions that there's a disproportionately higher incidence of force against Black and Indigenous people in 2021, Ottawa police say. I'm not too sure how many people know about this article, so I just want to read it to put it on the record. Ottawa police say that there were disproportionately higher incidents of use of force against Black, Indigenous, and Middle Eastern people by officers last year. A report from Monday's Ottawa Police Services Board meeting looks at use of force by officers during 220,600 calls for service responded to in 2021. And the second article is an article about Ottawa wards with the highest and lowest crime rates. My ward is in the list of highest crime rates per 100 residents, and the article goes to try to make it look like these areas are just riddled with crime, when it's really just the fact that there's way more people that live there and it's way more densely populated. Also, yeah, when you have more surveillance per square inch in any part of the city, it's going to look like there's way more crime going on being reported than other places in the city that don't have as much surveillance. Yeah, that's all I want to talk about. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Well, folks, this conclude our general delegation. If you're registered to speak on specific item, you will be called up and when we reach those items. So item number 6 of our agenda today, there's any inquiries? Thank you. Item 7 of business, I will now go through the consent agenda. Item number 1, the chair's verbal report will hold item number 1. Item number 2, the chief's verbal report will also hold item number 2. Item number 3 is Canada Day briefing, and we have a chief's update. We'll hold this item. Item number 4, advancing cultural safer workplace program update. We also have presentation on item 4, so we'll hold item 4. Item number 5, Canadian Association of Police Governance virtual conference attendance and sponsorship. Executive Director report that the Ottawa Police Service Board approved. 1, the purchase of 1 registration for Canada Association of Police Governance annual conference taking place virtual September 9 to 11, 2022 at the cost of $500 before taxes, which is good for up to 5 attendees. Item number 2, a $1,000 grant sponsorship for the Canadian Association of Police Governance 2022 annual conference. Is this item carried? Carried, thank you. Item number 6, reappointment of Special Constable, Ottawa Police Service Chief's report that the Ottawa Police Service Board approved the reappointment of Ottawa Police Service employees listed in document 1 as a special constable pursuant to section 53 of the Police Service Act in accordance with the terms and conditions set forth in the attached approval of appointment forms. This item carried. Thank you. Item number 7 is appointment of Special Constable Carleton University Chief's report that the Ottawa Police Service Board approved the appointment of Carleton University employee listed in document 1 as a special constable pursuant to section 53 of the Police Service Act in accordance with the terms and conditions set forth in the attached approval of the appointment form. This item carried. Thank you. Item number 8, appointment of Special Constable Rcmp Chief's report that the Ottawa Police Service Board approved the existing reappointment of up to 291 Rcmp employee as the need arises through this event pursuant to section 53 of the Police Service Act in accordance with the term and conditions set forth in the approval of appointment letters. 2, approve the appointment of up to 200 Rcmp employee over and above the 291 from item 1 as the need arises through this event pursuant to section 53 of the Police Service Act in accordance with the terms and conditions set forth in the approval of appointment letters. 3, delegated authority to the chair and vice chair to approve the appointment of special constable status in relation to Canada Day event occurring between June 27, July 4, 2022, as well as any agreements between the board and other supporting police agency. These appointment and reappointment will be valid until November 30, 2022. On the item carry. Thank you. Item number 9 is the appointment of Special Constable Rcmp Chief's report that the Ottawa Police Service Board approved appointment of the Rcmp employees listed in document 1 as a special constable pursuant to section 53 of the Police Service Act in accordance with the terms and conditions set forth in the attached approval of appointment forms. Is this item carried? Thank you. Item number 10 is reappointment of Special Constable Rcmp Chief's report that the Ottawa Police Service Board approved the reappointment of Rcmp employee listed in document 1 as a special constable pursuant to section 53 of Police Services Act in accordance with the terms and conditions set forth in the attached approval of appointment forms. Is this item carried? Thank you. So item number 11 will hold. We have a speaker about this. Is the South Campus project update. So that's on item number 11. Item number 12. Also, we have a delegation. Is Professional Standard Unit 2021 Annual Report. We'll hold this item. So item number 13 is 2021 is the Ottawa Police Service Board Annual Report, including 2021 Use of Force Report, Chief's report, that the Ottawa Police Service Board received this report for information. On the item received. Thank you. Item 14, outstanding board inquiries and motions, June 2022 Executive Director's Report, that the Ottawa Police Service Board received this report for information. Is this item received? Thank you. Item number 15, letters of accommodation, Chief's report, that the Ottawa Police Service Board received this report for information. And the item received, thank you. If there's any other business to add? No? Okay, so we'll go to item number 1, and that's the chair's verbal report. I promise to be brief. So I'd like to begin by heartfelt thought with the family of Constable Matt Hyla, I hope I pronounced properly, On June 2015, our police service and our community tragically lost Constable Matt Yalahan following a single vehicle collision. This young constable started his policing career in November 2020. In his short time with our service, he had already made his mark as a kind, gentle, and welcoming individual. Our thoughts and prayer go to his family and loved ones, as well as his policing family. He will be greatly missed. I'd like also to observe a short moment of silence out of respect for the constable and his family. If you might join me, please stand. Thank you. Chief's recruitment. Last week, the board officially launched the community engagement process for the chief of police recruitment. The process has been run by the Ottawa-based firm Hafid Solutions. Residents are able to complete a survey online to provide their feedback. The survey will remain open until July 13. Residents can also register to attend a Zoom session on July 8. In addition to the survey and Zoom session on July 8, Hafid Solution will also be doing targeted outreach with various representatives in our community. For more detail, we can visit the board's website. A report back on the finding of the community engagement as expected at the board's July 25th meeting. If I can take a minute to say thank you to the vice chair, as she is the chair of HR committee, and her committee member for doing the heavy lifting of this. Thank you very much, Madam Vice Chair. Diversity celebration. Last Wednesday, I had the pleasure to attend the Ottawa Police Annual Diversity Celebration along with a few of my board colleagues. It was a wonderful celebration of the diversity and the richness of cultures that make up Canada's mosaic. I want to thank the Ottawa Police Service for hosting this community building event. It was the first time, I believe, in 3 years we had that in person. Canada Day. Finally, I would like to make a few comments about Canada Day. We will be receiving an update from the interim Chief Bell this evening on the Ottawa Police Service Public Safety Planning. They will also be keeping stakeholders, including residents, update throughout the week, primarily through the Ottawa Police Twitter account. Extra resources have been brought in to ensure community safety. The Ottawa Police Service has a duty to ensure the right of lawful and peaceful demonstrations to protest. However, the condition that led to the unlawful protest in February will not be allowed to reoccur. Chief Bill and his staff will provide further update on their operational plan later this evening. But before I leave my note, so we just got few calls from some of my colleagues and some of our residents. There's a gathering in the outline area with what so-called supporter of the former convoy or vehicle with the hockey stick and the Canadian flag gathering in public places. The message to the community, if they are on private property and they're unwelcome, the private property need to reach to the police, not through 911, but through the number 613-236-1222 extension 7300 or ottawapolice.ca and report it. Also, if they are on public property like the community centers or community in the outline area, they need to call 311 and the city will be dealing with that through bylaw services and the Ottawa Police Service. So I just like to wish everyone a safe and happy celebration of Canada Day And as I said earlier, I hope this talk about the unlawful protest or then takes away from the celebration of this beautiful country we call home. So with that, is the Ottawa Police Service Board received this report for information? If there's any question on the chair's report? See none, can we receive the chair's report? Received, thank you very much. And now I turn it to Chief Bell.
Thank you very much, Chair El-Shantiri. Good evening, members of the board. So Chair El-Shantiri, thank you very much for recognizing Constable Vijay Madialigan. I would also like to recognize his uncle who is present in the chambers today and thank him for his support and all of the support he helped provide his family, as well as members of the police service. Vijay was an amazing young man and a tragic loss for us in the Ottawa Police. He joined us in 2020 as part of our December new recruit class. And in a short time he was with the service, he left an amazing and lasting impact. DJ served our country with pride in the Canadian Armed Forces as a combat engineer. He was equally proud to be a member of the Ottawa Police Service. The loss of this young and talented officer has been exceptionally difficult for those closest to him, including those in his graduating class. On behalf of the Ottawa Police Service, I want to again express our deepest condolences to his family. Thank you very much for taking a moment to recognize Vijay and put him in your thoughts and heart. I also want to recognize National Indigenous History Month. This month is an opportunity for everyone to honor the history, contributions, and resiliency of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. Last week was National Indigenous Peoples Day, a day where we can all recommit to working to building trust as we move forward towards reconciliation. The Ottawa Police Service is working to build relationships with all of our Indigenous communities. We are committed to pursuing greater understanding, cooperation, and respect. We're committed to improving service, interactions, and outcomes for our Indigenous community. As we celebrate our diversity, it's important to recognize Indigenous communities and celebrate their diverse cultures and unique heritage. Constables Christian Lamarche and Lisa Bocage volunteered at the Matahokie Farm, which hosted the Summer Solstice Indigenous Festival that ran from June 21st to 26th. They are both actively involved in leading positive relationships with our Indigenous community. They both bring a wealth of experience, including lived experience, to their very important roles. I'm pleased to be presenting the 2021 annual report at tonight's board meeting. I would encourage you to review it and to learn about the important initiatives we've implemented as a service and the progress we have made. It also provides Ottawa residents with an overview of the number of calls for service, our response times, things we have done to support victims of crime, as well as other data that offers a snapshot of policing across our city. Last year, we saw a 7% increase in the demands for service, which is in line with the province's easing of COVID-19 restrictions. We're already seeing an increase in crime this year, which exceeded pre-pandemic levels. This includes both violent crime and property crime, which have both seen increases. You can review the full report attached to this evening's board agenda or visit our website at ottawapolice.ca. I want to highlight some of the great work by our guns and gangs and investigative units recently. Since the start of the year, we've seized 44 guns. We've seen 25 shootings in 2022, which is down 39% from 39 at this time last year. In early June, our guns and gangs unit targeted firearms and drug trafficking in Ottawa with Project Street Sweeper. That investigation resulted in 6 crime guns, several arrests, and seizure of narcotics. We continue to focus on gun violence through prevention and investigations. Our officers are also seeing an increase in the number of people using replica handguns in the commission of crimes. These guns can look very real and can have the same intimidation factor as real firearms. They are also very hard for our officers to determine by initial visual verification if they are real or fake. Some of those replicas have been purposefully made to look like the real thing. It is important for the public to know that those found possessing these replica guns will be charged under the Criminal Code of Canada. We have raised this issue with the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police, and we know that we will likely need legislative changes to deal with this issue. We were pleased to host our annual diversity celebration last Wednesday, the first time we were able to do so in person since the start of the pandemic. It is held in recognition of Canada's Multiculturalism Day on June 27th and is a chance to acknowledge National Indigenous Peoples Day on June 21st. Ottawa is growing in its diversity, and celebrations like these help us to be more inclusive and aware of the many cultures that call this city home. Before I end this report, I want to highlight one letter that we received this month that shows the caring of our officers. I have a severe disability because I've lost a significant amount of my brain as a result of surgery to remove a brain tumor. Last week, I got lost. I was going to visit a friend. They were not home and I could not figure out how to get back to my home. Trying to find my way home, I asked a very nice lady for help. I do not know if she called 911 or she called the police directly. But about 10 minutes later, a police car pulled up. I cannot tell you what he asked me, but nothing was unkind. Constable Ralph Kojotovich, my apologies, Constable Ralph Kojotovich, just wanted to try and figure out what was wrong. I told him I'd had a hard time talking and that I had lots of medical problems. The problem was I was probably almost incoherent. All I knew is that I wanted to go home. Constable Ralph made some calls and then said that he would take me home after finding my home address on the computer. He was very kind during the ride, reassuring me that I would be okay. When we got to my home, he made certain that I was okay. I cannot thank this man enough for what he did. The officer is an extraordinary officer. Please thank him for the great job he did to help me. That is only a glimpse into what our members do each and every day to keep our city safe. I'm proud of the work they do, proud to work alongside of them and watch them in their duty of care to enhance our community safety and well-being. I want to take an opportunity to wish everyone a happy Canada Day. And we have a presentation right after this on an update on our Canada Day planning. So thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Chief. Any question for the Chief on the Chief's report? See none. So we're going to hold our question for the Canada Day briefing, Chief. So on the Chief's report, the Ottawa Police Service Board received this report for information. Received. Thank you. Turn it back to you, Chief, for Canada Day briefing.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to ask Superintendent Bernier to come up to the mic. So as the board's been aware in our in-camera briefing, we've been actively for a number of weeks working with our partners to plan the events that are going to occur on Canada Day. Superintendent Rob Bernier has been leading our planning team under the leadership of Deputy Paul Burnett, and he will provide you an update on what our plans look like, what our threat picture looks like, and we'd be happy to take any questions after that. So I'll turn it over to Superintendent Bernier.
Good evening, Chair, members of the Police Services Board. As mentioned by Chief Bell, I will be the event commander for the Canada Day event that's taking place this year. Canada Day 2022 will be an unprecedented event for Ottawa and the Ottawa Police. The response and security posture will most definitely be enhanced. To put into perspective what this unprecedented event is going to look like, we're looking at Canada Day 2022 on 3 levels. The Canadian Heritage Canada Day event, which traditionally is held on Parliament Hill, is going to be held at LeBreton Flats this year. Previously, because the events are on Parliament Hill, that would generally lie in the responsibility of security to Parliamentary Protective Service, or in the previous years with the Rcmp. Ottawa Police would look after the downtown footprint around that area. But given it's at LeBreton Flats this year, as the police of jurisdiction, we have responsibility of that area. There are also events taking place on Parliament Hill, smaller events, which means that our footprint of the downtown core will be spread approximately across 3 kilometers from LeBreton Flats through the Wellington corridor and into the market. As we come out of COVID-19 pandemic, as we've seen across the world, as new festive events are starting to open up again, these events are seeing larger than normal numbers of participants. We're expecting the same to happen here in Ottawa. On top of this, our community across the entire city have been anxiously looking forward to having their own festive events, and we're looking at approximately 15 across the Ottawa jurisdiction, 5 of which are relatively significant in size as well as time. These events will be similar to the Heritage Canada event that'll have different events taking place throughout the day into the evening, and then finally into ending with fireworks. And as everyone can very well realize through social media, we're more than likely going to be and anticipating some freedom movement demonstrations and activities surrounding the group that we've seen earlier in January and February, and subsequent events in our city. Planning has been well underway for well over a month. We have a fully integrated planning team that includes all our municipal, provincial, federal partners, as well as our policing partners at each of those levels as well. The planning has been driven by a joint intelligence group that's working to gather as much information and intelligence as possible as what to expect with regards to threats around our nation's capital, the event, as well as any demonstration and convoy type activity. We do know that there are various groups that are talking on open source that they're intending to come to Ottawa to demonstrate. So we're monitoring those very closely and preparing accordingly. I'm sure everyone feels the same way when we talk about occupation and what we saw in January and February, and that's a concern for everybody. So there is that risk that always exists, whether it be occupation with vehicles on our streets, occupation of vehicles on private property, or even occupying areas with tents, such as an encampment. As I mentioned, we're constantly monitoring this information intelligence out there to be best prepared. We will be planning a posture that will start prior to Canada Day and extend after Canada Day as well. Based on everything that I've laid out, you can well imagine that this is going to be a strain on Ottawa police resources and any local partners that we would generally work with. And as such, we have reached out to municipal services across Ontario, the Ontario Provincial Police, our federal policing partners with the Rcmp, and looking at other provinces for support as well. But as what you can well imagine, these services across the country are having their own celebrations on Canada Day, their own demonstration challenges, as well as it's summertime with people on holidays. We'll continue to work to ensure that we have the resources in place with the support of the various agencies that are stepping up to help us. So as I mentioned before, we are aware that partners and in our city partners and community have been deeply affected by the events since January 2022 and are rightfully concerned. People have the right to visit Ottawa before, during, and after Canada Day. We are implementing a comprehensive and robust plan to be best prepared for most eventualities. The strategies that we're adopting are very similar to the strategies that we implemented for Rolling Thunder. Plans will be scalable and measurable to respond to what we are faced with. Our partners have been part of an integrated event command table planning team to ensure that everyone's well informed, are part of the decision-making and can be part of the solution. The goal is to ensure a successful Canadian Heritage event, as well as all the other Canada Day events across the city on July 1st, while maintaining community safety and well-being. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Bernier. So we'd be happy to take any questions that the board has on our plan.
Just before I turn to my colleague, Chief, some of the news media and some of the residents are calling, seeing sign of what you want to call convoy or convoy supporters with the hawk stick, the Canadian flag in the outlying area. Obviously, if it's on a city property, the city is the owner, we need to call 311, but if it's on public, like it's on a church parking lot or on the side of the road, should then still notify the police for information? Or if they're not any unlawful practice, we just leave it the way it is? I'm not sure what advice you have for the public on this one.
So thank you for that question. What I can tell you is we're monitoring that incident right now. People should contact us and provide information to us so we can respond anytime that somebody's on private property where they shouldn't be, or anytime someone's in a public place and not acting lawfully. So we would ask our residents to remain vigilant, and when they do see those types of circumstances to make sure they do reach out to us on our non-emergency line, and we will have a response put in place.
Okay, thank you, Chief. My colleagues, any question? Member Leeper.
Thank you very much, Chief. So with respect to, I want to ask you some of the same question I asked you in the in-camera briefing, which was around the harassing behaviors downtown that might not be an attempted occupation, but we want every visitor to the downtown core who wants to take part in the festivities to feel safe. What should people's level of tolerance be for occupiers or those who would spread messages that are homophobic, that are misogynist, that are racist? Will police tolerate those sort of messages where they're unaccompanied by otherwise unlawful behavior?
So I think the easiest way to answer that is just with a no. Those behaviors will not be tolerated. We've been very clear about setting expectations for people attending our city anytime, including on Canada Day. If there is hate or biased crime incidents, if there is intimidation or threats, we will actively investigate those. We'll actively respond to them and investigate those. We've been trying to be very clear with everyone around our posture for Canada Day. Canada Day is a very important day to Canadians. It's a day where we celebrate our country and all the good things in it. But people need, when they come, they need to be lawful. And they need to be respectful of our community. We know the scars our community feels from the days in the end of January, beginning of February, where there was all of the negative interactions with people who were attending and occupying and illegally protesting within our streets. We've heard those, we've listened to those, and I want to reassure you that those feelings, that trauma that our community has felt is front and center in all of our planning efforts and will be front and center in our response efforts.
What should residents do if there are groups of occupiers or groups of people with hateful messages who they encounter outside of, for example, the vehicle exclusion zone, so at the corner of Bank and Somerset, just for an example?
So there won't be occupiers because all of our planning is established around ensuring that people do not occupy our streets, people do not take over areas of Ottawa. And we've been clear around our expectations around that. We've set very deliberate plans and we've resourced those plans so that occupation does not again occur. In terms of harassing, intimidating, hate-based activities, we again have been very clear about the fact that if those occur, we will create a response, we'll start an investigation, and we will look at fully complete our investigation and look at any potential criminal charges around that. So if people are experiencing that, they need to contact us. They need to call the police and we will have a response established.
What is that contact route for police? Very
So we have
specific.
on our website, it's make the right call. So it would depend on the threat that people are feeling. We have 911 that's available. We have a non-emergency line. You can put reports in online. So there's various ways to actually contact us. If you're downtown, what I will tell you is you're going to see a police officer. You can also let them know what's occurring. So there's many different ways to contact us. Our ask is if you see something coming that you have a concern with, make sure you contact us and we'll investigate it.
People will contact their city councillor, they'll tweet at them and they'll email. Will the councillor liaison function be back up and running?
Yes, absolutely. So that's something we established at the end of the removal of the illegal occupation, as well as in subsequent protests since then, and we will have that up and running again this time.
I've appreciated the work that your staff have done on that. And then the vehicle exclusion zone, I believe, only goes to Laurier Avenue. Will you have a capacity to deal with vehicle-based protests south of Laurier?
So one of the principles of our planning that we've engaged in is that we need to have a mobile ability within our response plan, and that's been well established and is one of the core principles that we're working with. So if something occurs out of the vehicle control zone, we do have the ability to respond and react to it.
And then level of tolerance for things like tent encampments. Superintendent Brunet spoke to the potential that we could see things like tent encampments rather than vehicle occupation. Is there going to be any tolerance for people setting up tents on private property or similar efforts to take over our streets again?
So tents on private property will be ultimately up to the property owner. If they call and advise us that they aren't warranted or wanted there, that's trespassing and we'll have those people removed. In terms of on public property, we've been working with the city, we're working with the federal government to actually look at response plans and preparation around if somebody did try and camp on, say, federal property. So those plans are in place. And as I've indicated, we're resourcing a plan to be able to enact them.
And final question, I expect that there will be counter protests downtown. Can we expect that counter protesters will be afforded all of the same protection for their expression that the occupier, or sorry, I'm trying to find another way. I can't say freedom supporters. I just can't say it. Convoy supporters or such. Will they have the same treatment from police in terms of protection for their expression?
So absolutely, because everyone has the right to protest lawfully within our country. It's one of the fundamental rights that we recognize and support. So everyone will be treated in terms of lawful protests in exactly the same way. Our reaction will only come and our action will only come if a protest becomes unlawful. And that is the same across the board, and it doesn't matter who's protesting. If you're going to protest in the city, come enjoy Canada Day, but do so lawfully.
I'm sorry, one other question. Do you have any reason to believe there will be any parades? I hadn't thought of that. The Rolling Thunder obviously had a significant parade component to it. Is there any reason to believe that organizers are seeking to parade with their vehicles through the core?
Well, they won't be allowed to have a parade through the core. We have a vehicle control zone and plans in place to ensure that vehicles don't go around those historic national areas of importance. So there will not be a vehicle parade downtown.
Do you have any intelligence to indicate that they might want to parade through the residential areas adjacent to the core, to the central business district?
So in this forum, I don't think it's appropriate to get into intelligence-based information. What I can tell you is we continue to bring in intelligence. We continue to bring in information, both from social media and other sources to actually look and refine our plans as we move ahead. That will be done right up to and including the time the Canada Day or any associated protests are unfolding.
Okay, I think Centertown residents, particularly tolerance level for parading in vehicles through the community is going to be very low. So that's something to keep in mind. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Member Leifer. And Madam Vice Chair, go ahead.
I have just one question. I'm wondering, what is the best way for our residents to stay informed? Is it through Twitter? What, minute by minute kind of account? What is the best way to stay informed? Thank you.
So from an Ottawa Police perspective, the best way is through Twitter at Ottawa Police. We'll be providing up-to-date information as we move ahead. The city also has a Twitter handle as well as information on their website that will keep people updated around traffic information, and Heritage Canada has active information they'll be pushing out around the Canada Day events in and around the Breton Flats.
Any other question to the chief? Oh, Madam Curry.
That was one of my questions, so I have one less, one fewer. My other question is about, that has come to me, is it's a command center that we saw with the occupation going to be up and running, or a form of that, some way that you are communicating best with all the other forces?
So I can tell you, we do have a strong command structure put in place. We continue to work with our partners to establish command and control over the resources that we're deploying. So I can tell you absolutely that I'm satisfied with the command structure and system that we have put in place, and it will be effective on the day.
Just on behalf of the outlying areas that also have Canada Day events that are, there's the big one downtown and then there's other ones all around. Are you confident that you can redeploy personnel, staff officers from downtown or surrounding area to the outlying areas if there are issues?
So mobility has been one of the key components of our plan, the ability to respond to different areas. And there's been considerable planning put into making sure that we can keep public safety and security in all of those other events, as well as the event downtown.
My final question is, do we have a general estimate of how many people we believe will be downtown or coming to Ottawa for Canada Day?
Well, we've through the federal government, we've been advised that we can expect in excess of 100,000, in the hundreds of thousands of people who will attend. This is, as Superintendent Bernier indicated, this is a unique year. We've been locked down or not able to participate in something like this for the past 2 years. So people are ready to come out and celebrate. That's why we're going to the length we are to make sure that we can ensure safety and security so people can come out and celebrate.
Okay, great. And I will just say that on behalf of Member Leifer, that we'll certainly do everything we can to get the right information out to people as to the numbers they can contact. And Councillor El-Shantiry will be sending us more information. So we'll certainly get as much out as we can. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Member Curry. There's any other question? I'm looking for someone who hasn't asked yet. Okay, Jeff, go ahead. Member Leifer.
Fairly quickly, will you be briefing the media frequently through the day? Because obviously mainstream media channels, CFRA, city, et cetera, are good sources of information for residents as well.
Yeah, so we have a comprehensive media plan for the week. You saw this morning, Chair El-Shantiry and myself were at a press conference with the mayor and city partners. We'll continue to do media availabilities through the week to make sure we're getting that information out, and on an as needed basis throughout Canada Day and beyond, we'll have spokespeople available to communicate with the media.
Thank you. So if there's no other question, thank you very much, Chief, and to all of you, and Superintendent Bernier, good luck. And please keep in mind, this is about Canada Day celebrations, not about any other. Let's hope we keep focusing on a celebration. With that, the Ottawa Police Service Board received this report for information. Is the item received? Thank you. Item number 4, we have Advancing Culture Safer Workplace Program update. Chief.
Chair, I think I'll be leading the conversation on this one. Give the chief a break.
All right.
I'd like to invite Michelle. Michelle's joined. Michelle Gauthier has been the lead director on this project. Thank you, Michelle. So I thought, so we do have a brief slide presentation. I'm going to start by just giving us a little bit of background and context quickly, and then I'm going to turn it over to Michelle for the update. So you'll recall at the January board meeting, we presented our plans for the Safer Workplace program. And just as a reminder, this program is a joint program between the police service and the board. And it stems from the Joint Strategy on Workplace Sexual Violence and Harassment project. The project was designed to address sexual violence, harassment, and intersectional systemic issues, such as gender-based discrimination, racism, and homophobia at the OPS. The project included securing an independent law firm, that was Reuben Tomlinson, who did a review and made recommendations to us, as well as heard some complaints and set up the complaint process, the initial process. So this program, we did take all of the recommendations from the review that Reuben Tomlinson had made, and we are implementing those. And the program was also designed, including significant collaboration from the community, and from experts both in the private and public sector. This program will respond to the demands for change in the OPS culture. And today we want to report on our progress and how we're moving from reports and recommendations to action. So I'll turn it over to Michelle for an update.
Thank you, Celine. So slide 2. Sorry, thank you. Next slide. So as part of the project, we developed a strategy to help guide us through the development and design of the Future Safe program. So the following strategy outlines 4 key components that we focused on as we designed. The first one being, the first pillar being leadership commitment from both OPS and the board itself. Ensuring that the commitment is longer than a fiscal period, that it is a multi-year, multi-phase issue, and that it will take time to respond and execute. The second one being, as part of our strategy, the second pillar being strengthening our workplace program. So we actually identified a new way of adjusting and responding to workplace complaints by looking at the complete picture. So we're looking at how do we prevent the actual issue from occurring? How do we keep informed of the issue, the scale, the magnitude? How do we support our members that are going through the issues at hand? How do we respond to those issues? So how do we manage a complaint from start to end? And finally, how do we restore the member back into the workplace? So that's the multi-phased approach within the program that we're currently developing. The third component is a partnership alignment, and this is a requirement to ensure we are bringing all of the key influencers from across the board, both the board, the service, and both associations, the OPA and the SOA. Understanding that all 4 institutions really play a key part in cultural development, and we wanted to ensure that there's a mutual focus, and that being our members, that we're all have a focused interest in improving the workplace for all of them. And then finally, it's looking at a culture shift, advancing culture, and removing some of the systemic barriers that contribute to the cultural issues, as well as some of the that perpetuate within the organization. So those 4 areas basically form the program that we've developed. And interestingly enough, this was built back in May of 2020, early on in the project. And as Reuben Tomlinson started doing the intake process, as well as the workplace assessment, they also identified these 4 key components within their report as critical to OPS's success in combating harassment and violence within the organization. Next slide. So directly following the board meeting in January, we actively started our planning and our implementation work. And so over the last several months, we've focused on building our foundation of this program. This is a multi-year program. Stage one is setting the foundation of the prevention, the support, the response, and the informed components. And as you can see on the slide, anything within the green is what we're actively engaged in or have completed. We have been looking at initially having a launch date of July of the new independent office, which will be an office that is resourced with 2 investigators with legal background in human rights or in employment law, as well as a mediator and workplace assessment specialist, as well as a workplace administrator, acting very independent from OPS without, proper chain of command. It's acting independent, trying to emulate what we've learned with Reuben Tomlinson's work over the last 18 months as an independent third-party intake provider. So we are still working with our working groups. We have an external working group, which is comprised of industry experts, both from the private and the public field, providing advice and validation and challenging some of the components that we're putting together. And right now we're actively working on our evaluation and monitoring plan as we move forward. So this is really to provide the board a quick update in terms of the movement that we've had to date. A lot of work is still happening and still underway, and we are anxious to get this up and running. And as with many organizations in the city and across the country, having some difficulties within the labor market, it being such a tight market right now, that we have extended our recruitment efforts for our investigator positions. So we've initially launched the investigation or the recruitment of those positions in May, and we're continuing to do so. So hoping to have some resources in place by early summer. If you have any questions, be happy to take them.
Madam Vice, just before we go to the Madam Vice Chair, maybe you can elaborate a little bit. One of the working group we have, one of the experts on the working group mentioned to one of the meeting, once you create that safe zone for individual to come forward with their complaint, we're going to see more of that. Can you just elaborate, like, what are we, how to address that and how to really make that safeguard safer for the individual to come forward? Because she elaborated on it, the doctor, quite a bit. Maybe you can just bring us a few minutes of it, if you don't mind.
I think I've heard you, Chair. So the independent office was truly designed to rebuild trust and confidence of our members when reporting incidents or having issues related to the workplace. So with that, we're going to have a independent reporting. It's offsite. It's not part of OPS current facilities. It's remote, so you don't have people seeing, people going into the office. So there is that safe ability. The technical, the IT components, the phone set, everything is separate from OPS. So we're really trying to ensure and hold true to the recommendations put forth by Reuben Tomlinson to have this as independent as possible. So that is one of the trademarks of what we're doing as part of this. So similar to Reuben Tomlinson, I've been part of this project, leading this project for about 2 years now. And Reuben Tomlinson has had, a multitude of intakes of complaints. And the idea of making things confidential was critical. And, to this day, I still don't know one complaint that has gone through that process. So, and I think that's the beauty of it, is as much as I'm very intimately involved in this, I really don't know what's going on from the complaint process. And that's the same type of experience we want to extend to our members as we bring this in-house and have an independent body. So, we are planning to report on an ongoing basis, not only to the board, but to the membership in terms of how things are progressing. We have our external advisory group, which is comprised of some members of our Community Equity Council, as well as Wage Canada, which is Women and Gender Equity Canada, Shelter Movers Ottawa, Carleton University, Canadian Armed Forces, Rcmp, and our Senior Officer Association. So they're working with us as we start implementing. As part of this entire 2-year endeavor, we've had over 100 people part of the program development, whether it was research, whether it was design, whether it was focus group, and the build and the strategy and so forth. So it's been quite a comprehensive program design. I think, kudos to the organization as well as to the board for taking that time to listen and learn from its members and those in the community to make this environment as best as it can be.
Thank you so much. I hope I didn't steal your question, Madam Vice Chair.
No, you just opened the door. Thank you very much for your presentation. I've been involved with the OPS for 7 years now, and this conversation did not start this year. It's been going on. It's a very, very long and very difficult problem to tackle. And so I appreciate all the work that you've done to this point. I understand what the challenges are. I'm very familiar with the Reuben Tomlinson report. I've read it myself. And I know how difficult your task is ahead. And for me, I think what is the most difficult thing is that so much of this goes underground, right? It's very difficult for someone to come forward and to speak about the problems that they're having, especially if it's with their superior. And so I would like you to explain, if you can, when will you take a case and when does a case go to the professional standards unit? What's the difference between the two? And another question that I have, I understand there's been 100 people working on this. I know that Reuben Tomlinson are staying by your side until you hire someone, the main investigator, which I'm very glad to hear that. But I'd like to know, how are you going to create a sense of ease for someone to come forward? How are you going to reach down and find out who's suffering and who needs help, and that they know that they can trust you?
So, Madam Vice Chair, thank you very much for the question. I'm going to start and then I'll turn it over to Michelle. I think you hit exactly on why we believe that what the package we've put in, the program that we're putting in place, will be successful. There isn't an investigative process that is going to help solve the issues we have within our organization. There isn't any one pillar of the prevention, support, or information, as well as the response that we have, that is going to solve it. It's going to take all of it. We have a huge focus that's being placed on our prevention component to look at making sure that we instill positive pro-social norms within our organization from everyone, that we create an environment where people understand the expectations of appropriate behavior, and then call people out when it's not there, and have a way to be engaged with one another to create that good working culture that we're seeking. So I will turn it over to Michelle to talk about our response components, but I think it's really important that when you look at this project, it's the totality of the work that we're doing across prevention, support, response, and continuous improvement that we believe will make it successful where other attempts have not been as successful.
Thank you, Chief. In terms of what type of complaints go to the office versus PSU, it's based on the Part 5. So I'm at a high level, and I'm sure Hugh can actually provide further details associated to that. But there will be a triage component. And, if it rises to a level of serious misconduct, whether it's violence, whether it's sexual violence in nature, it would automatically have to go to the PSU. misconduct issues that are less serious, harassment, bullying, what that may be, would fall under the independent office. In terms of, how do people start coming forward? What was interesting is that as we built this program, we actually approached it from a culture perspective, that we used an approach, a culture of accountability approach to change. And that speaks to changing the experience of members who then change current cultural beliefs, which in turn changes action, which will then get us different results. A lot of the fear right now rests within someone's ability to get promoted, being, seen as a complainer, someone who is, just the fear of reprisal. And so as part of our prevention pillar, we are actually tackling a lot of those systemic barriers that has been identified as part of this work, but also in past reports, the gender audit report, all the other reports. We're actually bringing them all back, and the recommendations, including the Rubin Tomlinson, includes those recommendations. So we are, transforming a lot of our promotional processes. We are transforming and have transformed our performance management process, where it's based on merit and expertise and experience, as opposed to subjective, things in nature. So we're seeing that shift happen, and we are actually tying a lot of behavioral components in with the performance management pieces as well as promotional. So as people start seeing, as members start seeing changes and seeing those rise, to different levels based on merit, as opposed to what people may think, but we'll start changing people's experiences and beliefs.
So listening to you and to the chief, are we talking about zero tolerance then? Are we talking about making those who are doing wrongdoings, having them accountable for their actions? How are you going to, I don't want to use the word enforce, but how are you going to go back to that person who's done something wrong? And how is that going to be dealt with?
I think it's important to identify in that the need to have this independent office. And that is who will be the ones determining the course of how different occurrences, different interactions proceed through the system. I don't think there is the ability to blanket say it is absolutely this, because every circumstance is different. There are some circumstances that will need an extremely fulsome investigation. There's some circumstances that will need a fulsome investigation that will result in discipline. Other times mediation may be appropriate. Other times performance management or training may be. So I think we've really tried to build a program that will support a system that looks at the uniqueness of all of the members of our organization in looking at how we support them all to make sure we move ahead. Sometimes discipline is going to be required. We will absolutely be able to do that. Sometimes people just need to learn how to work together better.
Yes, I think that's at the bottom of isn't it? That's where it starts. So finally, my last question is, we're partners in this. The board is partner, and we're also overseers on how well this program will go forward. So how are you going to report back to us? How are we going to be in a working relationship? Like you mentioned that there were all kinds of other organizations that are at the table with you. How is the board going to be part? I mean, maybe we should be telling you that, but what are your ways of communicating the information back to us so that we can do our job? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Well, we do have the chair and the chief that are co-chairs of our external advisory group. So they are actively part of those committee, and which is one tomorrow. We have a meeting tomorrow. But going forward, we are more than happy to provide updates and briefings to the HR committee or, going forward at any time. And those that are more than welcome to be part of any of our working groups as well.
Well, I like that idea. I think that's a very good one with the HR committee for sure. All right, thank you.
Member Doucet.
Thank you for the briefing. You mentioned the IT environment, and of course, you'll be dealing with sensitive information, and it's always a concern with respect to leakage of that information. Will the environment be completely separate and managed separately from the OPS IT environment? And what controls will you have in place to ensure that you're not going to suffer a data breach?
Well, we're currently working on that right now. So it is a standalone case management system that only the office would actually have access to, as well as secured shared drives and I believe different domains, domain names and so on and so forth. So what I do know as we're kind of building through it now is that it will be separate. It may be within the network, but sectioned off or cordoned off.
Member Leaper.
Thank you very much. One of the fascinating parts of this effort is that attempt to keep the function of this office separate from OPS culture. A lot of us have, we don't trust OPS culture. There's certainly a lot of perception problems there. What is the level of daily interaction that these new staff will have with OPS? And how will culture creep, for want of a better term, be monitored? Familiarity in terms of close working relationships can often result in capture, if in a different context. How will familiarity and collegiality be prevented from becoming culture co-optation of this new function?
It's a great question. And I believe that was part of Ruben Tomlinson's recommendations, is that you want the, and that again is the difficulty we're having in terms of just attracting candidates, because it is only a 3-year term. It is not a full-time permanent position. So we do want turnover every 3 years to ensure that there isn't that culture connection. Being off-site away from an OPS facility is the other one. So we are, and it's not an area where people would be going to the office unless they're part of an actual, a meeting or part of a complaint. So, and the second part was as part of the affiliation. So Ruben Tomlinson also recommended that we're not to hire, or we shouldn't be considering those that had previous employment by OPS or through Ottawa Services Police's OPSB.
Sorry, did you say other services?
Sorry, the Police Services Board. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
But open to hiring people who have experience working in a policing environment? I mean, ideally, wouldn't you be hiring people who don't have policing background, but are really HR focused?
They're HR focused, so human rights lawyers or employment lawyers,
Okay.
as well as adjudicators.
And that's, so I do like that choice to make it a turnover position. So you have fresh eyes to prevent that over familiarity that can change attitudes over time. That's good. Okay, thank you.
Could I just add to that? I appreciate the question, and I think it's actually food for thought for us. I think it'll be really important to be very deliberate when we hire our initial group of people to set out a code of conduct for ourselves. So how are we going to ensure that we stay arm's distance from them? And so I appreciate the question. I think we'll take that away, and when we have those initial conversations with our new employees, we will be really deliberate about setting out some rules of engagement or a bit of a code of conduct for ourselves that we can return to, and to make sure that we're all behaving in the best way to keep them independent as possible. So thank you for that question.
And that touches on the question that Member Valiquette asked as well, which is I was wondering, what is your next check-in with us? But it sounds like that's TBD.
So we're happy to work with the board, with Executive Director Ferraro to look at a reporting cycle that you would want to achieve or receive. I would suggest and recommend that it's good to report through the HR committee because we can have more wholesome conversations around specific issues there. So we're happy to take direction from the Police Services Board and happy to provide any sort of reporting we can on this.
Thank you. I'll let our HR committee mold the best schedule. Thank you.
Thank you very much to all of you for your great question, and thank you, and hopefully we'll see you tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Also, thank you, CEO Dunker, and Blair, I have to tell you, it's a lot of work. I know we came in a little bit in the middle of all this, but I have to say it's a lot of work has been done, and those meetings are very valuable with the community or the external community members. So thank you, Chief. On this item that the Ottawa Police Service Board received this report for information. The item received. And we will be coming to HR committee, Madam Valiquette. Number 11 is the South Campus project update. So before we I believe we have Samantha McLeese to speak and Foranza. But before we say, just put it in a little bit of context. So this South End Campus project has been on, I believe, originally from 2011 or 12, I want to say. I think that's when it was announced at the time. And at the time was back and forth discussion with the city. And also we as a city, we made a decision to collect development charge and directed all to policing versus divided in other with the paramedic and fire. So in order to build up the amount so we can do this project. And obviously some study been done about it, some project design and other happened. That the last we checked is some millions of dollars, at least 11 been spent up to date on other information, EA and other. In recent time, when we start to see the need for the emergency management team building, we reach out to both Chief Bell and Chief Ayat or General Manager Ayat to speak about relocating and working together. So what's on the front of us today, there's no decision, there's no delegated of any authority. All what we're asking, we need refreshing to the report we have asked about other facility. We have Leitrim on Bank Street, we have a Green Bank, and we have Vermont. So we need a report to refresh what's need to be done. If we are not to go ahead with this project, or the recommendation came in November not to go with this project, well, then we have to return the funding to the city from the development charge. And also we need to start repairing and fixing the existing building, because we cannot leave them the way they are. So that's my understanding what's in front of us today in summary, unless Blair or Chief, you'd like to add any more before we go to the public. But I just thought the benefit of my colleague to know why we are here today. So, okay, so with that, I'll turn it to Samantha. I see she's already took her seat.
So Samantha's going to go after me.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine. Go ahead, please. You have 5 minutes.
Good afternoon. Before I start, I'd like to first go back to the land acknowledgement that this board gave at the beginning of this meeting and ask that you reflect on what acknowledging the land really means when you're entertaining the idea of building another cop shop on unceded and unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin people, amidst calls for land back and calls to end colonial systems of harm and violence, such as policing and the criminal justice system. The approval of the South Facility building was part of OPS's strategic plan in 2013. Since then, the conversations about policing and community safety have taken a very different course, and that strategy is no longer relevant in 2022. There's a deep desire from the community to find alternatives that actually meet community safety and well-being needs. And these calls for change are not just coming from a small pocket of loud people, as was suggested by a delegate during last month's meeting. Last year, the creation of this building was framed around the need for a new mental health strategy. And this year, it is now being justified and anchored around the community safety and well-being plan, as well as looking to partner with another agency to justify police expansion. Oddly enough, we also hear about how police don't want to be tasked with dealing with social issues that our communities are faced with. Just as an example, last year at the October 21st meeting of the Community and Protective Services Committee, where the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan was presented for approval, the chair of this board asked for measurable success and further stated that we all agree that some other agencies can do a great job and it does not have to be the police officers. This was in reference to mental health calls. But at the same time, we don't have that yet. How are we going to shift and build it? The answer is certainly not to waste $118 million and counting dollars to build a police-centered community safety and well-being hub, when the community safety and well-being plan itself calls for alternatives to police involvement, even for issues like gender-based violence and violence against women, with calls for community-based accountability frameworks instead. Police do not need a dominating role in the community safety and well-being plan. This is supposed to reflect a move away from policing. While it is provincially mandated in the legislation to have a police chief or their representative as part of the advisory committee, there's no mention that police need to be centered here or lead this. There's no reason to have a police building dedicated to this. In the early phases of community consultations for this plan, there was an overwhelming response from the community to defund the police, some of which was captured in the report. The focus of this is supposed to be upstream, and police are never going to be the pathway forward for such an approach. The Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan highlights 6 priorities: housing, mental well-being, gender-based violence and violence against women, discrimination, marginalization, and racism, integrated and simpler systems, financial security, and poverty reduction. What have the police done for the homelessness crisis, other than criminalizing unhoused people or facilitating evictions, which I know at least one member of the board is very familiar with? Mental well-being, we know that due to the tireless work of community voices who divested funding from the OPS's 2022 budget asks, the city has begun creating an alternative to police mental health response. Unfortunately, their approach and the guiding council are still heavily embedded with police interests and partnerships. However, it was made clear that cops should be nowhere near someone in crisis. Discrimination, marginalization, and racism. Policing is a racist institution, and history and countless stories of harm prove this over and over again, including the use of force report presented to this board, or what was happening in Toronto. And contrary to the delegates from last month's meeting that presented the report, who don't think that there's someone to blame, we do think that there's someone to blame for these issues, because a key reason to take a human rights approach is because there was a human rights violation. Financial security and poverty reduction. First, police criminalize people who experience poverty. And second, while all levels of government have failed to implement universal basic income for people, they often work in the framework of scarcity and austerity, yet police always get money when they ask for it. Gender-based violence and violence against women are often brought up when the police seek more funding. And I urge this board to read the letter from the Ottawa Coalition to End Violence Against Women that they wrote last year during budget talks. And understand that this is an institution that perpetuates this type of harm, and it's not going to be the solution. Lastly, I ask that you reject the idea that with an increase in population, you need to expand the police. As a previous board member highlighted in the previous board, the cop per pop ratio is not a good measure of community safety and well-being. As stated in this agenda item.
Can you please wrap up, please? You're out of time.
I'm 10 seconds away.
Okay.
As stated in the agenda item, the South facility is meant to replace both the Leitrim and Greenback stations. as they are at the end of their life. So is the idea that police communities keep communities safe. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Samantha?
Hello, I'm Dr. Samantha MacLeese, and I'm here today to speak to the South Facility update and to follow up on what you've just heard from Parnas. I'd like to remind you that the previous iteration of this board also heard from community members about this proposed facility and the need to cancel the project and immediately stop police expansion in Ottawa. Policing already places a massive financial burden on the city, and you've already wasted $11 million to design a new cop shop, attempting to brand itself as a community safety and well-being center. We saw the same kind of community hub wordplay with the Porsche dealership on Montreal Road, and decision makers aren't fooling anyone in either case. Neither a Porsche dealership nor a new police headquarters is meant for individuals, families, and communities who are in need of support, resources, and safe and accessible public spaces. We don't need a cop-run community safety and well-being center. This plan belongs to residents and communities who have loudly, clearly, and consistently asked for something other than cops. The consultation process for the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan indicated that residents want money invested in strategies and solutions that end homelessness, eliminate poverty and food insecurity, prevent and address gender-based violence and violence against women, end discrimination, marginalization, and racism, and contribute to mental well-being. In preparation for today, I revisited two important local resources. The first is the No Ottawa Prison Expansion campaign from the Criminalization and Punishment Education Project. And the second is the Alternative Municipal Budget from the Ottawa Coalition for a People's Budget. It was a really quick and easy exercise to imagine how to better spend $118.2 million, plus whatever additional costs will creep up and accumulate in relation to this new facility. Here are just a few examples of how this city can spend money in ways that will actually keep people safe and well. Cover daycare and after-school costs for kids in Ottawa. Fund an Indigenous youth hub to operate language and land-based programs. Increase access to sports, music, arts, and cultural programming. Fund community gardens to address food insecurity. Increase funding for employment services and youth mentoring programs. Hire violence interrupters, conflict mediators, and outreach workers. Provide Indigenous legal services to support Indigenous peoples dealing with legal matters. Create a monthly direct cash transfer for food purchases to households experiencing moderate to severe food insecurity. Provide permanent and supportive housing that goes far beyond current city targets. Establish a rent bank and additional rental supplements to prevent eviction and homelessness, as well as a tenant defense fund. Provide free therapy and counseling at all libraries and community centers. Invest more money in nonprofit co-op housing. Expand emergency housing capacity. Create more summer job opportunities for youth across Ottawa that pay a living wage. Increase access to harm reduction services. Hire more peer support workers and pay them a living wage. Direct money towards fare-free transit. Invest in new domestic emergency responses for queer and trans people. Improve housing supports for Indigenous youth. Expand capacity for restorative and transformative justice options. Increase the amount of funding already dedicated to creating non-police and non-carceral responses to mental health crises, and support for people living with mental health and or drug issues. I'll end today with another reminder for this new board that the budget for the Ottawa Police increased again this year, while nonprofit and community-based organizations continue to compete with one another over dimes. I've said this at previous meetings and it remains true. The Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan should not be used as a justification for a new cop shop. It should be used to expand community-based services that prevent and address harm and foster real safety. A growing city doesn't need more cops or space for cops and their weapons. It needs more services and resources for people who are criminalized and punished for being poor, homeless, and hungry. You don't have to wait until the November budget talks to reject this ask. Thank you. And I'll also remind people that on July 1st, there are plenty of Indigenous-led events that are happening around the city because not everyone considers Canada Day to be a celebratory event. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your presentation. I see. So what's on the front of us, colleague, is that the Ottawa Police Service Board direct the Ottawa Police Service to, one, continue working on North South facility and engage with other city services to explore opportunities for partnership and co-locations in the new building. Two, re-examine the funding strategy for the project, taking into consideration inflationary and market pressures related to delay of the project. Three, report back to the board in November 2022 with an update on the project and recommended path forward. Provide a refreshed facility strategic plan. And on purpose, we put it for November 2022 or maybe December, but I think by that time we'll have a new board and they will be up to the new board how they want to deal with the future facility. So that's what we're looking for. There's no fund. All what we're asking for this to be refreshed and to have a wholesome costing what's going to be the next step before the budget. So, Member Leeper.
Thank you, Chair. This is a relatively new issue to me. I'm not as familiar with the history of the South facility. It's going to take me a while to catch up. Dr. McAllis has just made a really legitimate assertion with respect to branding this facility in the context of the Community and Safety Wellbeing Plan. And the Community and Safety Wellbeing Plan doesn't speak to police facilities. How, and I take a look at the report, which speaks to this facility will also provide a unique opportunity for the OPS to partner and co-locate with other services to advance our community safety well-being strategy. And Dr. McAllis correctly identified the priorities of the CSWB. And I don't see how this facility advances those. And I'm just curious to hear your perspective on that, because it does sound like a branding exercise rather than fundamentally building the kind of facility that will make our community safer by housing people, by addressing poverty, by ensuring that they have food, that they have equitable access to transportation in our city, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Thank you for the question. Where I would start is, this is a debate that's been going on since discussion that's been going on since 2013. So I am happy to hear that it's new to somebody because it has been going on for a long, long time and we've had many, many conversations around it. I think your question is very legitimate, and how I would frame out the response is at a couple different levels. First of all, to build a building that helps support community and safety and well-being, and those agencies that are helping to meet the needs, meet the objectives within the community safety well-being plan. Organizations that support violence, support to women engaged in violence against women issues, homelessness and home security issues. Organizations that support that, organizations that support and or deliver mental health services to the surrounding community. The ability for us to be able to properly and more adequately coordinate with city services, social services around, as well as emergency preparedness services. So I think what we're asking in this is to continue to explore and continue to work on those opportunities that would exist in a building such as this. So that is our commitment, is to go and look at and ensure that we do align with community safety wellbeing service providers and the city services that are helping to support those, so that we can reimagine what a community safety and wellbeing building could be that has part of them as a policing service within that building. So I hope that answers your question.
It answers my question in terms of providing your perspective on it. I'm not sure that I agree with it. And so if I understand properly, the current price on it is 118 million as an estimate. How old is that estimate?
So the 118 million is the current budget for the project. It's not a price estimate for the building.
Okay. Thank you. And a significant amount of that, there was a certain amount that's expected to be paid by development charges. Do we have those DCs already in the reserves?
Yes, we do.
Okay, and then the rest of it is debt financing.
That's correct.
That's $118 million. I'm just trying to think, that's probably, that's 250 units of supportive housing that we could build in the city. What is the outlook for actually getting it built? This has been a discussion since 2013. Is this real? Forgive me, is this something that is realistic, we can realistically expect to be built? I guess the best way I can put it as a question is, what do you think the odds are that this actually will ever get built?
So I think that's an extremely fair and legitimate question. No, I think it's a very good question. What I can tell you is that within our asset inventory right now, we have very aging buildings. We have buildings that are going to come offline, or buildings that will need substantial investment in terms of infrastructure to be able to make them habitable moving ahead. We have leased buildings that are part of our portfolio as well, that would all of those would not be required. Those investments would not be required when we build the south building. So one way or the other, from a facilities infrastructure perspective, we are going to have to be investing money. So I believe, and I'm fully committed to exploring the areas that we're asking for support to explore, to come back in November so that we can provide the board with an update on our facility strategic plan and our exploration around the building of the south building. And that is the point at which we need to make a go or no go assessment, because if we do not invest in the south building, we will need to invest in some of those other buildings to make sure that we have locations for our members to work from.
Again, new board member question. I will only be able to use that excuse for so much longer, obviously. Is there a comprehensive facilities review on the books?
What we have is we have a 20-year facility strategic plan that is 7 years old right now. And
Okay.
what we are doing is within this request, or within this board report we put forward, we'll be updating the facility strategic plan and bringing it back to the board for review.
So ordinarily, I would want to do the facility services review, get that up to date, because obviously 7 years later, with very different understandings of the role of policing in our city, perhaps than we had 7 years ago, you'd want to update that. But I guess the wrinkle is that there are however many millions of DCs that have been building up in the reserves.
That's right.
I get it.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So on the item carry, if there's no other question, sorry, who have question? Dissent, okay. But you dissent to receive the information, you don't want information? I fail to understand this. This is to provide a refreshed facility strategic plan. How can I make a decision if we don't understand what we are dealing with? That's what we're asking, member.
Yeah, there are
okay,
3 other clauses.
Sure, but you have the right to dissent on it. Thank you.
So if you'd like, I can dissent on 1, 2, and 3.
I would like that because I like to receive the information.
Okay, so dissent on 1, 2, and 3 then.
Thank you. Thank you, member Leeper. And the rest of the item carry. Thank you. Item number 12 is a professional standard unit 2021 annual report. I believe we have a couple of registered speakers. So the first one is M. Wanyel. I hope I pronounced the name correctly. Is that how you pronounce the name? Wanyel? Wadi? I'm sorry, just. I thought the M was a person. I need you to put the microphone on, please. Okay.
Say that. I would like to give another 30 seconds for me because I have accessibility issues. I am on ODSP, and this is extremely anxiety filling for me for the last 2 years, actually, being here. So you can thank me later for being here, for giving me free consultation. 30 seconds extra, please.
Okay.
Thank you all for being here. I'm keep it on. The Freedom Convoy is coming and I don't want to be at risk. But you can see my eyes. Thank you. You can start the clock. I want to say this morning, I am speaking to the professional standards unit, something that I have a lot of. Let me talk. I know you guys put the volume down here, so I'm going to speak a little bit loudly and wake everybody up. Not on purpose, but yes, my name is Muniela and I am an advocate, maybe a reluctant advocate because I was supposed to be on the federal side until I had extreme anxiety hit me from all sides in 2011. But I am an advocate for Black women's health. So by chance, I'm also an advocate for not only women's health, because mental health is part of health, but also all citizens, because most definitely including elder care. I'd like to say rest in peace to all those murdered by neglect and long-term care. Happy election. Next, I want to say a shout out to, since we're talking about professional standards unit, I have been visited by maybe 5, 6, maybe 6 encounters at least with police officers on the streets, in the hospital, wherever they could lay down the law. And I want to say that this morning I had a really nice encounter where each individual saw each other as a human being. And I don't know that man's name, but I wouldn't say his name. He was a constable who came to give me a summons. And we just had a nice laugh. And it's been so long since we could do that. And I understand. My brother is a constable. He's a longtime constable, came down and helped from Toronto. He was on the horses. And he lended his expertise, just like he had for Barack Obama, to you guys. Whether or not you used it well, I don't think I would ask him. I just looked on his face. But he will be in unity because, as we know, and as we have all seen, anyone who's had the chance to look, there is a thin blue line flag that's been flying across on top of your building. I don't know how much clearer it can be, which side you're on. You're not on community safety side. So that's not an allegation. You can please pull up all of the documentation on Reddit Ottawa about the thin blue line. We have pictures of all the thin blue line badges. And so I hope that you have zero tolerance for that, the same way that you'll have zero tolerance this week for so-called convoy protesters not on your side. Also, we would have appreciated an escort service. Getting off topic. $110 million for the police center. Wow. Let me just put that out there. So again, in 2018, I had my CMHA file, Canadian Mental Health Services, London, Ontario, file transferred as per the request of my GP, my wonderful GP. I had great services there. My father had died. My mom was ill. These are my adoptive parents. I will remind you, for those people who are listening, they're 5th generation, at least 6th generation Canadians. So there you go. Not just a Black woman up here, a Black adoptee. I am saying that these are 5th generation Canadians. I came down to help out my mom and I lost all my supports. So how does this play into professional standards unit? Well, all I was given was anxiety management courses here, even though, when CMHA London looked at the 3-year wait when I got here, even though I transferred my file well in advance, they said, we must be doing something right in London, and they sure are, okay? Because they have a 24/7 unit where everyone can go if they're having a hard day, if they're friggin' lost their mother, and I lost my mom in February. But guess what? Instead of getting help from the Royal Centre, I've been told by the judge to hang tight, and I know it's not the judge, but it is everyone else who is giving money to all these things. And for the interim, which I hope you stay the interim, chief, to give us, you pretend it's performative transparency. Let's have a published annual peer-reviewed publication, put out the agenda well in advance for us. So yeah, the personal standards, I did do a misconduct report. I know it says 39 seconds. I don't think it has my 30 extra seconds. I came here, I can't see anything on the screen. Okay, I can't see anything on the screen, so it's very hard for me to participate. Most of the stuff doesn't work. I had to fight to bring into my accessibility support here. I wouldn't dare bring my service dog, who I had to train by my own, by the way. And now to hear that there was an officer, last time when he came, 2 officers on different separate occasions refused to sit down because I am a third-class citizen. I'm a third-class citizen. That's how I'm treated. Period. And I will play recordings for you next time.
There's no question, Manuela. Thank you, though. There is no question, ma'am. There's no question for you. Thank you. I didn't hear. Can you put your mic on? I didn't hear what you said.
Also talk into the mic, please. So what I'm saying is, will you please do this on Zoom next time so I don't have to have a heart attack up here and disturb all these people by just trying to hear what Interim Chief Bell is saying?
Okay,
Will
thank
you
you.
please? Diane Deans did it, who you overthrew.
So our next speaker is Marnie Waller.
Hello.
Hello.
Just to correct, my name is Marnie Weller. I was really interested to look at this report from the Professional Standards Unit because in the past I submitted a complaint to the OIPRD that was addressed by the PSU. I find this whole report and the sort of performative action of putting out an annual report about Professional Standards Unit and what it does to be very misleading. This report is not opaque in any way. It's just a placeholder. It doesn't describe the process, and the numbers that it reveals are very concerning. Over 300 complaints last year about this police service. That is not a trivial number. The idea that 323 people took the trouble to go through the OIPRD process, which is not a fun process. It's full of hassles and hoops. It's a lot of work. 323 people went through that process because something happened to them that they thought was important enough that they wanted to make sure that it was addressed by this police service, probably with the thought, like me, that they didn't want anyone else to have to go through a similar experience at the hands of police. In the introductory section, the PSU says that it takes complaints very seriously. My experience with OIPRD and the PSU refutes that claim. They do not take complaints very seriously. My complaint was selected for diversion. Now, it says that diversion is for matters deemed obviously not of a serious nature. My complaint involved discreditable conduct, specifically harassment and intimidation, unlawful exercise of authority, specifically illegal detention, as well as an officer informing me that Canadian police are very restricted in their actions. For example, he said, if the officer were to unsnap his pepper spray, he would have to fill out paperwork. So this is very restrictive on police officers. He then unsnapped it and gripped the device as though to withdraw it from the case while looking at me. This was considered by OIPRD to be obviously not of a serious nature. I find that unacceptable. Of the 323 public complaints received by OIPRD, over half of them were diverted to, they were either withdrawn or they were diverted to mediation. Over half. How is it possible that over half of those complaints were not serious enough to warrant an investigation? Also, my complaint, obviously a serious incident that occurred, diverted for mediation. Unacceptable. An investigation was necessary. I was pressured by both OIPRD and PSU to accept the informal resolution process. And you can see that this tactic works for them because, as I said, 60% of the complaints were diverted from being formally investigated. And let's not make a mistake here. When it's not formally investigated, there is no accountability. There will be no consequences. It'll be a meeting with a mediator. There may be some discussion, and that will be the end of it. That officer will not face any consequences for what occurred. Still, even with the bureaucratic barriers and the pressure at 2 stages, even after you tell OIPRD that you're not interested in mediation and that you want the investigation, you will get a call from the PSU, again, pressuring you to either withdraw or to go to mediation. Even after 2 of those opportunities, 136 complaints were referred for investigation. That's about 100 complaints too many. This is a ridiculous number. This is a professional police service. Policing is all about rules. Your duties are highly dictated. Why are there 300 total complaints and 136 complaints for investigation? The report notes that the number of complaints in 2021 went up by 13%. I'd like an explanation for that. There's no explanation offered in the report.
Can you please wrap up, Marnie? Your time is up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marnie. Lieutenant. If there's any question on the report to the, go ahead, the member Leaper.
Thank you. So I'll pose the question Marnie just posed. Why did complaints go up?
So thank you. I'm gonna ask Inspector Hugh O'Toole to come up, who he's on his way, who will be able to answer that for you.
Thanks. While he's coming up, I do take note of the gallery's concerns over the audibility. Is there anything we can do? We gotta get back in committee room. No, same. Yeah.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the board, and Chief Bell. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak. And I'd also like to thank the delegates for their input on this very important issue. Here to answer any questions you may have about the report.
Thank you. I'm not, sorry, Inspector O'Toole, I'm not sure if you heard the question by Member Leaper, but Member Leaper, maybe you can repose it, please.
Thank you. Ms. Weller concluded her delegation by asking, why are complaints up 13%? Public complaints made to OPRD. And it's a good question. I don't see a lot of analysis in this report of what's behind increases and decreases in complaints, increases or decreases in different outcomes. It's a very sort of, here are the numbers without a lot of background. So without delving deep into it, because I know that could be a very lengthy exercise, I will just pose that one question as an exemplar.
Thank you, Councillor Leaper. That's a very fair question, and I'll do my best to answer it as best I can.
If I can interrupt just for a moment, please. I will ask everyone who speaks now to speak really closely to your microphone because it's very hard to hear out there. So if you could speak close to your microphone, please, and speak loud and project. Thank you.
How's that? Is that better?
Is that better in the audience? Yes? Okay, there you go. Thank you. Let us know, put your hand up if you can't hear, okay?
Thank you. So we did note a steady increase in the number of public complaints since the pandemic in 2019. And it's also a time of increased public scrutiny about policing generally. We've also noticed sort of a phenomenon of duplicate complaints made by the same complainant. For example, in 2021, 3 individuals submitted a total of 29 public complaints. This represents 9% of the public complaints received prior to screening by the OIPRD. We also saw an increase in service and policy related complaints from 13 to 29. And I can explain a little bit more about that. I also did an analysis of growth in population and calls for service since 2017 as the graph sort of represents 5-year increase. And if you look at it, it looks like a linear and steady increase over 5 years. The population and calls for service have also increased in the range of 7 and 8 respectively, and this likely had an impact on the increase in the number of publics. I think it's also important to look as well at figure 2, which is the screen-in rates by the OIPRD after a complaint is received. And this doesn't indicate a linear increase, but rather a fluctuating rate. After the screen out process. Rates for that 5-year period up until last year were stable or actually declining in the 2017 to 2020 period after screening. But to be fair, we're still looking at a 12% increase in public complaints as compared to the previous 4-year average of 121. And professional standards continues to track these for any themes or specific areas of concern other than those that we've identified. I'll just speak a little bit about service and policy complaints. We took a long look at those in advance of the meeting this evening. Again, noting that we're up from 13 in 2020 to 29 last year and above the 5-year average of 20. Usually, you're looking for a specific reason or a specific theme, but here we couldn't find one. But what we observe is that 5 were screened out by the OIPRD and another 16 were withdrawn by the complainant after engaging with our ADR or mediation process, or our ADR process, which often involves mediation with a professional standards investigator. And what this basically boils down to is they had a conversation. The policy or the service they were complaining of was explained. It was to their satisfaction, and the matter was withdrawn. So I think that's encouraging despite the increase in the number of policy and service complaints.
So, and I'll ask you to maybe stop there because, every one of these graphs has got any number of details that are underneath it and get rolled up into the high level numbers. It's interesting analysis that you've just provided. And my question would be, why isn't that being provided as part of the report that's being given to us?
Well, to be completely honest, we sort of follow a template annual report that's been sort of adapted throughout the years. I've made various tweaks to it in my 2 years as a professional standards investigator. In terms of the information, the level of explanation provided, that's certainly a fluid process. We can continue to do that better. Certainly, I come prepared to speak to these things. When we present at the board, but we can undertake to do a better job at explaining that in print.
Yeah,
Member Leeper, what I would add, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. What I would add to what Inspector O'Toole's indicated is we'll take direction from the board, and it will need to be the flavor of what the board wants to have. In the past, we've been asked to be very fact-based and provide the numbers and then provide any sort of analysis in the verbal format, but we're completely willing to adjust that as the board sees fit.
Let me mull that. I'm sure that the other members of the board would also appreciate maybe a bit more detail because we've got a member of the public who is reading the report doesn't have the opportunity to pose questions to you. I'm fortunate. I'm in a position of being able to call you after this meeting and saying, can you give me a little more information on this number? But that's not happening in a public forum. And you've got a member of the public who wants an explanation as to why there was a relatively significant increase in the overall number of complaints. It's a legitimate question, and we can probably do a better job of making this available to the public with a bit more detail in the reports themselves. I don't want to try to provide you with that direction this evening, but it's something we can chat further about, I'm sure.
Well, it is an annual report. So we have a year to decide on exactly the formatting, detail, and level of analysis you'd like to see included.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Member Leeper, would you like to see us taking this to the complaint committee and have a discussion, give the residents or the community an opportunity? And also, as the chief said earlier, on committee, there's a little bit more dialogue on an item like this. Would you like to see that coming to a complaint committee before come to the board?
Sure. Yes.
Will that give what you're looking for and give the public a chance to ask us question on committee?
Sorry, you would like to, can this report come to the complaints board before? I wonder how many people are engaged with this forum. It's really easy to download a report. Counselors have the opportunity to say, hey, here's the complaints reports. And I think I highlighted parts of this meeting, for example, in my weekly newsletter last night. And it's the more information there is in the written report, the more accessible it is for more members of the public.
So the benefit of take it to a committee, so this way you'll have two chances to speak about it. You'll be invited and the public be invited as well.
Absolutely. So it doesn't have to be either or. Having this report come to committee first, where we've got a bit more time to explore these issues, as opposed to sort of we're trying to keep things to.
We'll reach out to you, but
let
us find a way to work with you on this one.
Thank you.
Or is any other question to the chief? So thank you very much, Inspector. You and is this item received? Thank you. And I believe this is our final public item. So our next meeting will be Monday, July 25th. Can please have a motion for adjournment? Okay, but please, so moved by Member Valiquette. So we are adjourned, but we're going to take a 5 or 10 minute bio break and to clear the room, and we want to continue in camera meeting. Thank you.